This year is probably the most serious I've been about actually growing fruit in my backyard. And I've learned pretty quickly that there is a big difference between reading about how something is supposed to grow and actually watching it happen in your own yard. Some things work better than I expected, some things didn't, and there are a few things where the original idea wasn't necessarily wrong, but then later on I realized I hadn't thought far enough ahead. So instead of just looking back saying I messed up, I've been trying to pay attention to what actually happened. What worked? What didn't? What did I change? And did that change actually make anything better? So here are 5 things that taught me this year I'm already thinking about differently. First idea, plan for full growth. One of the biggest things I learned this year is how easy it is to plan around what a plant looks like when you first put it in the ground or in the container. Because at that point, everything looks manageable. And then you give it a few weeks. My sweet potatoes are probably one of the best examples. This is my first time ever growing sweet potatoes, and I decided to put them in the grow bag. I knew sweet potatoes made vines, so I wasn't expecting this plant to stay perfectly contained inside the bag. But I didn't expect just how much those vines were going to spread. They started reaching farther and farther out, and I noticed something else. Anywhere some of these vines were laying against the soil, they were actually trying to root themselves again. Now, I don't consider this a failure. Sweet potatoes are still growing. The grow bag still gave me a way to try something I had never grown before. But now I understand plant differently than I did at the beginning of the season. And next year, I'm seriously considering giving sweet potatoes their own raised bed. Not because the grow bag was necessarily a bad idea, but because now I understand how much space the plant itself wants to use. That's something I want to get better at. Not just asking, where can I fit this plant today? But asking, what is the plant going to look like when it's fully grown? Second reason is give the plants room. Spacing is another one that surprised me this year, and my carrots are probably the best example. I planted pretty heavily. There are a lot of carrots growing in the same container, and technically, I probably could have done a better job thinning these earlier. Usually when you start learning about carrots, spacing is one of the first things you hear about. Give the roots room. Don't let everything compete with each other. But this is also something else that I learned. Just because something isn't perfect doesn't necessarily mean it has already failed. Even with carrots being crowded, I still pull some decent carrots out of here. Every time I harvested one of the larger carrots, I'm naturally opening up a little bit more rooms for the carrots that are left behind. So I'm seeing both sides of it. Yes, next time I would probably give them more room from the beginning. But I'm also learning not to look at the garden and immediately decide something has failed just because it doesn't look exactly like the picture in my head or in the gardening guide. Sometimes you just have to see what the plant actually does. Then you make adjustments from there. So the lesson for me isn't that spacing doesn't matter. It absolutely does. The lesson is next time I want to be more intentional about it, while also paying attention to the actual results I'm getting. Number 3, think ahead. The Crimson Sweet watermelon has probably taught me more than almost anything else I'm growing. I'm actually growing 2 different types of watermelon this year. I'm growing the Sugar Baby and I'm growing the Crimson Sweet. With the Sugar Baby, I really wasn't worried about growing it vertically because it stays on the smaller side. That made sense to me on the trellis. The Crimson Sweet is where I didn't think far enough ahead. And when I decided to grow watermelon vertically, most of what I was thinking about was saving space and getting the vines up off the ground. And that part worked. The vines climbed, the trellis supported them, the plants started producing. But once the Crimson Sweet started getting bigger, I had realized I had spent a lot more time thinking about how to support the vine than I had thinking about how I was going to support the full-size watermelon hanging several feet off the ground. That changes the whole situation. The Sugar Baby is one thing. The Crimson Sweet is another. Now I'm watching the vine, watching the trellis, and making sure the fruit itself has support as it keeps gaining weight. So I added support underneath the Crimson Sweet, and I'm checking it regularly. And again, I don't necessarily think growing it vertically was the mistake. The mistake was not thinking far enough ahead about the difference between the two varieties I was growing. Next time, if I grow another full-size watermelon like the Crimson Sweet vertically, the fruit support is going to be part of the plan from the beginning. That's one lesson I probably won't forget. The fourth thing is fix the real problem. This is probably one of my favorite lessons from this year because it actually led me to build something. Container gardening has a lot of advantages. You can move things around. You can grow in places where you might not have good soil. You can make use of space that otherwise wouldn't be doing much. But one of the problems with containers is water. When it gets hot and some of these containers dry out pretty quickly, and you can get caught in a cycle where you water it, come back, check it again, and keep repeating the same thing. And at some point I started thinking, instead of just asking how often I need to water this container, is there a better way for the plant to have access to water? That's what led me towards experimenting with self-wicking containers. The basic idea is that instead of watering only from the top, I can keep the reservoir underneath and allow moisture to move upward into the soil as the plant needs it. But solving one problem created another question. If I keep watering inside a container and I have a fill tube going down into the reservoir, how do I keep mosquitoes and bugs and debris from getting down inside the tube? So I started working on a removable filter for the top of the fill pipe. That became another little experiment. And that's what I enjoy about this. The watering problem led to the self-wicking container. The self-wicking container led to the bug filter idea. And now I'm already thinking about how that setup could continue improving. Instead of repeatedly fighting the same exact problem, I wanted to start asking whether there's something about the setup itself that I can improve. Now on to the fifth reason, write it down. I need to write more of this down. And I mean physically write it down. I know notebooks aren't exciting. Everybody has an app for everything, and I use technology too. But sometimes the simplest thing that actually gets used is better than the perfect system that you never touched. Right now, I can remember a lot of what happened this season, and I know which plants struggled. I know which ones surprised me. I remember things I moved. I remember the things I watered differently. I remember some of the things I fertilized. I remember where certain plants really started taking off. But 6 months from now, a year from now, am I going to remember every one of those details? Probably not. And that matters because I don't want to record what went wrong. I want to record what worked. If one plant grows extremely well, I want to know what did it. Where was it growing? How much sun was it getting? What container did I use? How often was I watering? And if something struggles, I want the same information. Because if I change something and the plant improves afterward, that tells me something. And if I make a change and absolutely nothing gets better, that tells me something too. So I'm not trying to create some complicated garden database. This can be simple. What did I plant? When did I plant it? Where did I put it? What happened? What did I change? And what happened after that? Because the next season, I don't want to rely entirely on memory. I want to be able to look back and say, okay, that actually worked. Or, yeah, I tried that already. We're not doing that again. And I think the notebook eventually is going to become one of the most useful tools I have out here. Now, let's talk about what actually worked. And I want to make one thing clear. I don't want this season to become a list of everything I did wrong. Because a lot of things worked too. Some things worked even when I wasn't completely sure they would. For example, my 2x6 beds are good examples. I got cucumbers growing here, Swiss chard, basil, cantaloupe that ended up here almost by accident, onion, rosemary, and somehow all of this is still growing together pretty well. Now, would I plant every single thing exactly the same way next year? Probably not. But that doesn't mean the experiment didn't teach me something useful. The same thing applies for my carrots. The same thing applies to the watermelon. The same thing applies to the sweet potatoes trying for the first time. Gardening is giving me a chance to actually see the results instead of assuming I already know what the results are going to be. And I think that's probably what I enjoy most about this season. One thing I've learned over the years is that you don't improve something by pretending every decision you made was right. You look at what happened. You pay attention to what worked. You pay attention to what didn't work. You make an adjustment, and then you see whether the next results get better. I'm not trying to turn my backyard into some kind of science experiment, but I do want to get better every season. So when the next year comes around, I'm not really starting over. I'm starting with everything the garden taught me this year. And one of those lessons actually turned into a project of its own. The watering problem I talked about led to me building the self-wicking container. And then I added a removable filter and kept the mosquitoes and bugs and debris out of the reservoir. If you want to see exactly how I built that setup, I could put that video up on the screen. And if you're learning this stuff along with me, subscribe to Field Note. I'm documenting what works, what doesn't, and what I learned along the way.